All right, so finally got some long-awaited parts in. This time I actually purchased a genuine 38 millimeter tile wastegate. So this is actually a real unit, whereas the other one that I had was a knockoff. So yeah, this is a genuine tile 38 millimeter. You can see this. This comes with like multiple different spring rates, which basically equate to whatever given boost level you want to run. So like you might have a 5-pound spring, 10-pound spring. You can even double them up and, you know, run a combination of both to hit higher boost pressures. The nice thing though is that since I'm running a Fueltech FT450, I've been buying a lot of their supporting components for it. So for instance, like this is something else that I got in the mail today. This is their dual billet block boost controller. So it's dual valve. You have an increase and decrease solenoid, so you can really dial the boost in like really incrementally. This setup would use a CO2 tank. All right, so this explains how it works a little bit better. So you see you have the Fueltech dual port boost controller right here. Have the wastegate right here. You run a dome pressure sensor. That's basically the pressure that you're putting on top of the wastegate to keep it closed. CO2 tank, that's the pressure source because it's instantaneous, whereas with like if you relied on manifold pressure, you would have to wait till the turbo would spool up in order to have positive pressure to put on top of this wastegate. I'm planning on running like maybe a 9-ounce or 12-ounce CO2 bottle. Also got the Turbo Smart wastegate in. I'm sorry, Turbo Smart BOV. See if I can get this thing open. Another really high quality product. So yeah, this is it's a really nice piece. And this is a part number on it for the guys interested. And the reasoning behind going to this external wastegate is actually due to packaging. So unfortunately, the way I have my turbo mounted, the internal wastegate actuator is positioned like right at the 12 o'clock position. And I want to say at its highest point, measuring from the top of the compressor housing to the top of the wastegate actuator, is almost like 4 inches. And that's pretty much room that I'm losing out on, you know, mounting the turbo a little bit higher than how I have it mounted in pictures, which would give me more swing arm clearance and more clearance for suspension compression. So got rid of the internal wastegate as bad as I didn't want to, or as much as I didn't want to, and I picked up this 38 millimeter. The only thing about this external wastegate is I feel like this ID of this wastegate is a little bit larger than what I need for my setup. And the reason I say that is because the pipe that I'm feeding the turbo with is like 1.6 inches or so. And this is 38 millimeters right here. So when this thing opens, it is literally dumping all exhaust flow out of this port. Whereas like if I restricted this down to let's say a 20 millimeter or a 25 millimeter or so, it would be a more rational ratio with, you know, dumping exhaust flow to lower turbine speed. So, yeah, that wouldn't be hard to incorporate. Kind of do something similar to how the NASCAR people run the restricted throttle plates. So yeah, that's probably what I'll end up doing. I may restrict it down to maybe like 20 to 25 millimeters. I measured the stock one on the Garrett Turbo that I'm running, and it's actually 19 millimeters. But I think I can get away with running a little bit larger because I'm running E85. So when you run E85, you have a bit more exhaust volume, so it kind of negates the need to have, you know, a more free-flowing exhaust side. So that was just for the guys interested on and why I went this route as opposed to the internal wastegate that was, you know, integrated into the turbo stock. Yeah, so this Turbo Smart BLV is a pretty compact unit. Everything they do is pretty much high quality. Same with the towel. The reason I got this one is because this is probably like the smallest one I could find packaging wise. So, yeah, this should work pretty good. What's going on, guys? So, as you can see, pretty much got everything bagged up. I'm actually preparing to ship all this stuff out to Arizona. Racer's Edge, they're actually helping me out with the new engine build, because I was going to have them do some custom machine work on my new cylinder head gasket setup. So I mentioned that I am going to a copper O-ring head gasket setup, and that's pretty much just more so for planning for the future. I mean, I'm sure this setup will make some pretty good power, but yeah, it's just, it would be foolish not to just do it now, because I mean, you never want less power. So I went through everything, organized everything. So you can see I got the clutch stuff in one bag. What is this? The counterweight or counter shaft. Let's see. I got all the shift linkage stuff. I actually just got this package in from Motorsport the other day. So I ordered this stuff like a month ago, actually. But this one shaft, I think this is the drive axle assembly, this was holding up my order, because this thing was like on a indefinite back order. So I called around, and Partzilla had one left in stock. So had I not got that, I probably would have been screwed. So finally have everything for the transmission. And for those that don't know, I am moving to a WR450F transmission. Or I guess WR450F or YZ450FX, because they both use the same transmission. So this is a wide ratio transmission. So I literally got everything. And I did my homework on this because, you know, there's certain differences between the YZ and the WR stuff. So I just pretty much just printed off all of these parts diagrams. So I just wanted to, you know, do a comparison of all the part numbers to make sure things aren't getting mixed and matched, because that can easily turn into a nightmare. So I don't, you know, wanted to avoid that at all costs. But I got all the parts. I got new shafts, all new gears. I literally have every single thing on that parts diagram. I just ordered it all. New oil pump, everything. And I also have, obviously, a new crank. I have that new CWI Pro Rod Crankworks. It's a billet rod, so I shouldn't have to worry about that breaking this time around. Let's see, what else? Oh, yeah, I also upgraded to the WR stator, too, to have a little bit more stator output, or wattage output for the new electrical system. Also got some more stuff rolling in from Fuel Tech. So I have their billet, dual valve billet block boost controller. So this is a really high quality piece. You get a lot of resolution with this sensor versus a Mac valve. So I am planning to run CO2 on my bike. I've been looking at the MPS CO2 kits, because they make some really compact stuff for motorcycles, like Hayabusas and turbo Hayabusas, and then, you know, just your average like air shifter stuff. So also got the Fuel Tech Flex Fuel sensor. So with me running the Fuel Tech ECU now, I'll be able to actually read ethanol content. So that'll be really cool. So it'll be nice to actually run, 93 gas when I'm in a pinch. So I'm not fully excluded to running E85. I mean, I will run E85 for the most part. This time I might actually play around with some higher octane E85. So one ethanol R is pretty much like a race version of E85. And, I kind of want to play around with it on the dyno and see what kind of gains I pick up. But the fuel tech that I have, which I mentioned in the last video, because this is actually the harness for it right here, I actually returned it because I started doing a deeper dive on what I was trying to log on the bike as far as sensor wise. And it turns out that the 450 just isn't enough for what I'm doing. It's not a bad system at all. It's just with what I want to log, I need a 550. So I did buy the FT550. That should be here later this week. That'll be pretty sweet because that also has the pitch and G meter sensor built in. So I was under the assumption that the 450 had it. I was wrong. So anything higher than or anything starting with the 550 and up has the pitch rate sensor and then the G meter, accelerometer, and all that good stuff. So that'll be pretty sweet because I can use all that stuff for traction control tuning, which will be pretty badass. So all right, so I know I've mentioned about coming up with like a better solution for like turbo oil return and whatnot, because like my last setup worked, but the turbo drain definitely was not in the best location. These bikes tend to have like a lot of positive crankcase pressure, and that usually doesn't work out too well when you're trying to return oil against, a pressure differential in the case. So doing something a little bit different this time. I actually did a little bit of digging around on Facebook, more so like, forced inducted bike groups and stuff. So like Turbo Hayabusas, just anything boosted motorcycle wise, because those guys tend to mount their turbos pretty low, and they don't really have like a lot of issues with turbo oil drainage or anything. So I was actually able to find this. So this is a piece that is made by Top Bike Performance. This guy is actually based out of Poland. I think his name is Tomas. That's how his name is pronounced. Hopefully I didn't butcher it. But the crazy thing about this is, let me see if I can put this phone down really quick. Yeah, the crazy thing about this is that, so this is designed for a Turbo Hayabusa, but I ordered this on a whim, because, I expect to have to modify everything, when doing something so exotic. So, but this was made for like a Turbo Hayabusa. And for those people that aren't familiar, like this is a pretty big thing in aftermarket stuff. Because it's set up similar, but like mechanical fuel pumps, stuff like that, that's like driven off of the cam or the crank. So this is pretty much similar to that. This is a 1/8 drive spud right here. But the crazy part is like I said, like this isn't designed for a Yamaha. This is for a Turbo Hayabusa. And on the Turbo Hayabusa, this is reliant on the stator cover inspection hole threads. And as you can see, this threads right in. And then obviously you would have like an O-ring seal on here and and some thread seal on the thread, so so it doesn't leak oil or seep or anything. So the only thing about this is that this has a like a male hex drive spud, And usually, like on those 4-cylinder bikes, they have internally threaded cranks. So generally you would have, oh, here it is. So generally you would swap out your crank bolt with something like this. So you can see how this is a Allen key, and this Allen key would basically plug onto this bolt right here and essentially drive it. The only thing with that is on the YZ stuff, grab this crank, and this is, oops, the stator side of the crank right here. So as you can see, there is no place to thread that bolt, which would act as the drive spud to turn that pump. So what I'm gonna have to do is take the stock nut and make like a custom deal. I'm thinking maybe like a 8mm socket and cutting it down really shallow, and then maybe just welding it to the nut. And this was something I actually went over with Crankworks because I just wanted to make sure, you know, I wasn't going to mess up the balancing of the engine or anything with having that extra weight off the end of these threads. And it looks like it shouldn't be an issue, but yeah, even this spud right here, I might have to cut it down a little bit. I really need to get this crank back in my mock-up block just so I can see what the clearance is between the end of this drive spud and the end of this nut that threads on here. But yeah, this is a pretty trick setup for the most part. I actually have a little test bench set up right here. Let me finish threading this in. But yeah, this is like a pretty compact solution because this is essentially like a mechanical scavenge pump. That's the correct term for it. So I grabbed some tool. Even as much as I hate to waste this stuff, I don't have enough in that bottle for a single oil change anyway, so I'll just use it as some test oil. But so we could just simulate like it would be, you know, sucking oil from the turbo and returning it into the crank. And you can see the oil return hole right there. Right there. So I'm using this drill right here just to turn it to basically act like the engine. And I highly doubt that I'm going to be able to do this with one hand, but oh, let me see. Yeah, this is going to be a mess. One second. So as you guys can see, I have that inlet port. This is basically the side that would be sucking oil from the turbo. I have that submersed in oil. So I'm going to drive this spud with this drill right here, and we can see how this will work. So let me put that right there. Hopefully you can see this. I'm not even really spinning this thing hard, and this is like impressive. Like, it cleaned this freaking cup out like in no time. Yeah, I mean, I probably lost some of it because I knocked it over, but I'm just really impressed with how much oil this thing moves at such low RPM. So I can only imagine, like, you know, just that idle, just at 1500 RPM, it should be insane. So really happy with this purchase. Like I said, it might take a little bit of modification, but for the most part, I'm just happy that it's, you know, threading to these stock threads, because that, I definitely thought that was something that was going to require some custom machine work. So yeah, this is a pretty cool setup. So I feel like this will work much better than an electric pump would, and Obviously, I didn't want to run an electric pump because I just did not want that extra taxation on my electrical system, because these really don't put out a lot of power. I think maybe 10, 11 amps, and that's with the WR high output stator. So, yeah, I just wanted to avoid that at all costs if possible. Yeah, so this is how it looks mounted on the bike, or on the engine, I'm sorry. One thing I will do probably a little bit differently is, I hate these aluminum fittings on bikes. They don't have a place on a dirt bike because they snap. So I will probably take this aluminum fitting out and swap this out with either some, with a steel fitting and maybe like some custom swage lock. So, and for the guys that don't know what that is, that's basically like some aluminum tubing. A lot of people use them for like turbo oil feeds and stuff. But the nice thing with this setup is I really don't have to run a large diameter feed, because this pump is, you know, it's a constant vacuum on the line because it's a rotor style pump. So I can get away with like a smaller diameter drain. So that'll make it a little bit more compact. But this fitting definitely will be swapped out with something steel or just something stronger than this aluminum. So, but yeah, for the most part, it clears pretty good. I will be taking this up to the shop and mounting this on the mock-up motor so I can see what the foot clearance is like. But I really don't think it'll be too bad, because of all the videos that I've seen, like, of me riding my bike, like, my foot is never in this area because the shifter is somewhere like back here. So pretty sweet. Yeah, and something else I forgot to mention is, just to give you an idea of how much this sticks out the stator cover, measuring from this flat right here, so from the face of the stator cover, this sticks out 30 millimeters. So it's not too bad. Yeah, so for the most part, I'm going to finish getting this stuff packed up. I actually got an order coming from my guy over at Donelands. Shout out to Ken over at Donelands. Those guys, great group of guys. If you guys ever go out to Silver Lake, definitely stop by. They have literally everything you need. Like, you'd be surprised what they have in stock there. So yeah, shout out to those guys. I'm just waiting on that order to get here because I bought a entire bearing kit for this new engine. And yeah, so get this stuff packaged up and get it shipped out to Arizona. Also getting all the transmission parts rim finished, so that stuff should shift butter smooth when I get it back. And yeah, just stay on the lookout. Things are actually moving pretty fast considering, you know, how drastic of a build this is. So yep, just stay tuned and should have a new update soon.